Thandor of Eternos. Thandor did not wear the colors of the guard in the Eternian pits. Down here, titles meant nothing. Armor meant less. The pits lay far below Eternos, carved into the black stone older than the palace itself. No banners flew here, only chains, iron braziers, and the low roar of a crowd that stank of sweat, blood, and coin. Nobles came masked, merchants came drunk, soldiers came desperate. All of them came to watch men break. Thandor rolled his shoulders as he stepped into the sand ring, feeling the weight of borrowed steel in his hands. A short sword, dull-edged, but heavy enough to crush bone. He had paid for it with 3 weeks' wages and the promise of returning it unbroken. Across from him, the gate groaned open. The crowd roared. The man who entered was a wall of flesh and scar tissue, twice Thandor's size, easily. Bald, barrel-chested, arms like stone columns. Old brands marked his skin, the sigils of fallen warlords, pitmasters, things Thandor did not want to know the names of. The man carried a cleaver more suited for beasts than men. They rang the bell. The big man charged. Thandor barely had time to raise his blade before the cleaver slammed into it. The impact shuddering up his arms and into his teeth. Pain blossomed immediately. He retreated, boots sliding in the sand, hearing laughter ripple through the stands. Strength, Thandor realized, was cheap down here. He tried to fight as he had been trained. Precise footwork, measured strikes, conserving breath. But the pits did not care for training. The larger man swung wide and brutal, forcing Thandor to give ground again and again. Each block cost him. Each step burned. A blow slipped past his guard and cracked against his ribs. Something inside him shifted wrong. He gasped, staggered, tasted iron. The crowd screamed for blood. Thandor forced himself upright, eyes locked on his opponent's chest. He stopped watching the weapon, watched the shoulders, the hips, the breath. He saw it then, the pattern beneath the savagery. Power without patience, momentum without thought. He moved in as the next swing came, too slow. The cleaver caught him in the side of the helm, spinning him to the sand. The world went white, then dark. A boot pressed into his back, grinding his face into the grit. The bell rang again. It was over. The pitmasters dragged him out, while the victor raised his arms, soaked in cheers and coin. Thandor lay on the stone floor beyond the ring, ribs screaming, lungs struggling, pride in ruins. But he was alive. And as the noise faded, something else remained. Knowledge. He had learned how size lied, how brute force burned itself out, how fear fed the crowd, but patience starved it. He had learned that guards were trained to defend, not to endure chaos, and chaos was the true weapon of the pits. Thandor laughed weakly, a raw sound that hurt his chest. Next time, he would try to outfight the monster. Next time, he would outlast it. Above him, Eternia's towers shone gold and untouchable. Below them, a guard learned what it truly meant to survive. Thandor climbed the long stone stairs out of the lower districts and into the living veins of Eternos. Night had settled gently over the kingdom, not with darkness, but with the cool indigo light, the sky veined with faint auroras that Eternia was known for. Crystal lamps lined the streets, humming softly, their glow reflected in the polished stone and worn cobble alike. The city never truly slept, only softened. Shops had pulled their metal grates halfway down, leaving warm squares of light spilling into the streets. Music drifted from somewhere deeper in the quarter, a stringed instrument, slow and patient, accompanied by low laughter. Vendors called in quieter voices now, saving their throats for morning. Couples walked close together. Guards passed in pairs, helms off, hands loose at their sides. Thandor moved among them unnoticed, a broad-shouldered man in plain clothes, his injuries hidden beneath a travel cloak. The smell of Eternos at night filled the air, roasted roots and spiced meats, hot oil, sweet bread cooling on racks, the mineral tang of crystal lamps, and beneath it all, the clean night wind that rolled down from the palace heights. A curbside vendor had set up beneath an archway, a simple cart with a glowing heat stone and a canopy patched a dozen times over. The woman running it nodded as Thandor approached, already reaching for a folded leaf wrap. "Long night," she said. He nodded. She handed him the food, grilled river fish, crushed herbs, a smear of citrus paste wrapped in warm flatbread. He paid without haggling. Some things were not worth fighting over. He ate as he walked, letting the heat settle into him, the flavors grounding and familiar. Grease dripped onto the stones. He wiped his fingers on his cloak and kept moving. His building sat tucked between a glassblower shop and a closed tailor. A narrow stone structure with a stairwell that echoed softly underfoot. Inside, the air smelt faintly of old incense and clean water. No lift crystals here, just steps worn smooth by generations of boots. His apartment was small, but orderly. One room, a narrow sleeping alcove, and a wash chamber fed by a crystal-piped cistern that hummed faintly when opened. The walls were bare stone, unadorned, save for a single wall hook where his armor rested. Thandor stripped and stood beneath the shower, cool water cascading from a rune-etched spout. He winced as it struck bruised flesh, then exhaled and let it work. Steam gathered against the ceiling. The sounds of the city faded, replaced by the steady rush of water and his own breathing. Clean, wrapped in a simple tunic, he settled into the low bench near the window. The night breeze carried distant voices and the faint chime of a crystal clock marking the hour. He pulled his armor close, piece by piece. He polished it, not to shine, but to preserve. Leather straps checked and rechecked. Metal wiped clean of grit and dried blood. Each motion slow, methodical. A ritual as old as the guard itself. The armor was not grand. No gilding. Just serviceable steel, shaped to endure. When he finished, he set it back on the hook and lay down. Sleep came easily. Morning arrived on wings. Birds called from the palace garden, far above. Their songs carried down the stone corridors of the city. Light filtered through the window, pale and clean. Thandor opened his eyes and lay still for a moment, listening to Eternos wake. Footsteps below, shutters opening, the low hum of the crystal lines coming alive for the day. Another shift awaited him, another watch. He rose, steady and unremarkable. One of many who held Eternia together while legends slept. Thandor's day began before the palace bells. He rose with the light, pulled on his tunic, then his armor. Steel plates cool against his skin, still warm from sleep. Outside, Eternos was already stirring. Merchants argued cheerfully over stall placement. Apprentices hurried with bundles of tools. Somewhere above, palace guards changed shifts, boots striking stone in disciplined rhythm. At the gate, Thandor took his post. Royal guard duty was not glamorous. Most days were standing, watching, listening, answering questions, breaking up small disputes before they grew sharp. He greeted the same faces, as he always did. A baker who complained about taxes but always brought extra bread. A courier who ran too fast and talked faster. An old man who claimed he'd once sparred with He-Man himself. It was the talk that kept things interesting. Swear by the ancients, one guard muttered during a shift change. He-Man lifted an entire siege tower yesterday. Just picked it up like it was a chair. Didn't you hear? Another chimed in. Tila took down 3 beastmen alone. Skeletor fled before the dust even settled. Thandor listened, faintly amused. The tales grew taller with each telling. He-Man always stronger. The threats always larger. He didn't doubt the truth beneath them. Eternia was never short on danger. But stories were currency here. Passed hand to hand, polished brighter than steel. At midday, he shared a meal with 2 fellow guards beneath a crystal awning. Roasted grain, spiced vegetables, cool water drawn from palace lines. A sky sled roared overhead, and someone pointed, claiming it had once been shot down by Merman himself. Thandor chewed and nodded. Legends walked the same streets they did. That alone made Eternia strange. The afternoon passed quietly. Sunlight shifted. Shadows lengthened. The air cooled. When the relief horn sounded, Thandor handed off his post and returned his spear to the rack, stretching stiffness from his shoulders. He was halfway towards the barracks when a palace runner found him. Man-at-Arms requests you, the runner said, already turning away. He requests you now. Thandor frowned, then adjusted his armor and followed. Man-at-Arms' office sat deep within the palace, not a place of banners or marble, but a converted work hall that smelled of oil, ozone, and hot metal. Tools lined the walls in careful order. Half-built devices rested on tables beside ancient weapons. Technology and tradition sharing space without argument. Man-at-Arms stood over a workbench, one gauntleted arm removed, its internal components exposed as he adjusted something with a humming tool. Thandor, he said without looking up. Yes, Master-at-Arms. I've heard rumors, he continued. Hoverbots, spotted near the eastern border. Just whispers, nothing confirmed. That caught Thandor's full attention. Man-at-Arms finally looked at him, one eye sharp, the other hidden behind the visor. You've had quiet days, and I suspect you're the sort who doesn't trust quiet. Thandor said nothing, but he didn't deny it. I want eyes out there, Man-at-Arms went on. No heroics, no engagements unless necessary. Take a Wind Raider, scout, observe, report back. Thandor felt something warm spark in his chest. Excitement. Clean and immediate. Yes, sir. Man-at-Arms nodded once, already turning back to his work. Try not to scratch it. Thandor was already moving. He left the workshop at a near jog, armor clanking softly, mind racing ahead of him. The palace hangar doors were opening as he arrived. Wind Raiders resting in neat rows, their sleek forms catching the late sun. For the first time in days, his step was light. A guard's life was often quiet. But sometimes, Eternia remembers you. The Wind Raider screamed. Not the scream of fear, but of hunger. Engines howling as Thandor pushed the throttle forward and felt Eternia fall away beneath him. The craft leapt skyward, slicing through open air, its anti-grav plates thrumming hard enough to rattle his bones. Wind tore at him, tugging at cloak and breath alike, the pressure forcing a grin through clenched teeth. Clouds swallow him whole. For a heartbeat there was nothing but white, cold mist bending on his visor. Then he burst through the other side into open sky. Below, Eternia spread itself wide and alive, fields of golden rain rippling like water, crystal-fed rivers cutting silver paths through green valleys, towns clustered around old stone towers and glowing power pylons. Wind Raiders were not meant for gentle travel. They demanded trust. They rewarded courage. Thandor dipped low, skimming rooftops, then pulled hard up, laughing once as the craft climbed fast enough to steal the breath from his lungs. The Wind Raider answered every command, eager and wild, a predator of the skies. For a few precious moments, the world was speed and sound and the promise that nothing could touch him. Then the border came into view. The land changed subtly, fields thinning, stone rising from soil, the wild pressing closer. Thandor eased the craft down near a broken ridge, engines whining as they cooled. Silence rushed in, thick and heavy after the roar of flight. He dismounted, rifle slung across his back, laser pistol settled at his hip, spear in hand. The ground told its story quickly. Scored stone. Deep gouges carved into the rock as though something had dragged steel claws across it. Not animal, too precise, too deliberate. Thandor crouched, fingers tracing one mark, his jaw tightening. He moved like a hunter now, slow, careful, listening. The air carried a faint hum, rhythmic, mechanical. He followed it through scrub and broken stone until the land dipped into shadow. A cave mouth yawned ahead, half hidden by hanging vines and jagged rock. Sunlight struck something inside and flared back at him. Silver metal. The hoverbot floated just inside the cave, its frame gleaming, articulated limbs moving with unsettling patience. Tools unfolded from its body, welding, fitting, assembling. It worked with devotion, with purpose. Thandor's breath caught. On the stone floor, before it stood a form being born. Red metal, angular, tall, a Horde Trooper Prime. One of Hordak's Prime's assassins. Killers designed to butcher worlds into submission. Thandor had heard the stories. Cities erased, torn apart like paper dolls. He should have reported back. He didn't. Thandor raised his rifle and fired. The first shot shattered the hoverbot's sensor cluster. Sparks sprayed the cave wall. The machine shrieked in static and spun, limbs snapping out as it returned fire. Bolts scorched stone inches from Thandor's head as he dove, rolled, came up firing once again. The fight was brutal and close. The hoverbot was fast, adaptive, blades flashing, cannons whining as it pressed him hard. Thandor felt every bruise, every breath burning as he fought tooth and nail, driving the spear through its metal joints, emptying his rifle into its core until the machine finally collapsed in a shower of sparks and molten silver. Silence fell. Thandor stood shaking, chest heaving, smoke curling from the cave floor. Then he heard it, a rising hum, deep and resonant. The red metal form straightened, eyes ignited, cruel, glowing crimson. Systems locked into place with heavy final clicks. The Horde Trooper Prime stepped free of its cradle, towering over Thandor, armor flawless and murderous. Thandor checked his rifle. Empty. His pistol chimed uselessly dry. His arms trembled. His muscles screamed. Blood dripped from a cut above his eye and spattered the stone. Still, he lifted his spear. The Horde Trooper Prime tilted its head, studying him the way a blade studies flesh. Guard of Eternia, an engine of an annihilation, stood facing one another in the cave's mouth, sunlight painting one in battered steel and the other in flawless red. Neither moved. The world seemed to hold its breath. The Horde Trooper Prime struck first. It moved with impossible speed for something so large. Red metal blurring as it crossed the cave in a heartbeat. Thandor barely had time to brace before the impact sent him flying. He slammed into stone hard enough to crack it, the breath torn from his lungs in a wet gasp. The spear clattered away. The machine advanced, each step deliberate, heavy, certain. Thandor rolled as a crushing blow pulverized the rock where his head had once been. He came up bleeding, vision swimming, and drove his shoulder into the trooper's knee. Metal shrieked, the joint buckled, but did not fail. A steel fist caught him in the ribs and hurled him across the cave again. Pain was everywhere. His body screamed for him to stop. His mind told him stopping meant death. He grabbed the spear and thrust. Not for center mass, but for the seams. Places where armor met movement. The point bit deep into the shoulder joint. The trooper staggered, hydraulic fluid spraying like black blood. Thandor twisted the shaft and ripped it free, just as a blade tore through the air where his neck had been. The fight became chaos. They crashed through the cave mouth and into sunlight, trading violence in brutal close quarters. Thandor used stone and slope, drawing the machine onto uneven ground. He baited it into overcommitting, then punished the mistake, hammering joints, stabbing cables, smashing exposed mechanisms with the butt of his spear. The trooper adapted. A backhand caught Thandor mid-charge and snapped something in his leg. He went down hard, dragged across stone, sparks skidding as metal scraped metal. The machine loomed, rising its arm for the killing blow. Thandor rammed the spear straight up into the throat assembly. The trooper shrieked, an unholy sound of grinding gears and rage. Thandor surged forward, on sheer will, driving the spear deeper, using its full weight until something inside the machine ruptured violently. They fell together. The Horde Trooper Prime crushed the ground, twitching, red armor split, limbs scattered, dark fluid pooled beneath it, steaming in the sun. Thandor collapsed beside it, barely conscious. He forced himself up. Every step toward the Wind Raider was agony. He leaned against the craft, keyed the radio with shaking fingers, and croaked out his report. Horde presence, prime unit, border compromised. Then he slid down into the dirt. That was when he heard it. Footsteps. Metal on stone. Thandor looked up. The Horde Trooper Prime was standing again. Its body was wrong now. Patchwork, asymmetrical, rebuilt by its own internal systems. It dragged itself forward, one glowing eye fixed on him, murder undiminished. Thandor laughed softly. He told the Wind Raider the evacuation code. The craft powered up, lifted, hesitated. Go, he whispered. It screamed into the sky. Thandor pushed himself to his feet, turning slowly to face the monster. He rolled his shoulders, cracked his neck, and smiled. A tired, fearless smile. Come on then, he said. A shadow fell beside him. Wait. Thandor turned his head. Many faces stood there, staff planted firmly, his expression calm. In one smooth motion, his face rotated, human to robotic, metal features clicking into place. I'll handle this. Thandor blinked. How did you... Mechanic, many faces said, already moving forward. He saw everything. The Horde Trooper Prime charged. Many faces charged back. Thandor never saw the clash. The world tilted, dimmed, and finally went dark. When he opened his eyes again, the sky was a gentle blue. Mechanic stood over him, face smiling, neck retracted to its normal length. Easy now, he said. You're safe. Thandor swallowed. Handled, Mechanic said. You stood your ground when most wouldn't. Eternia won't forget that. Thandor nodded once, relief washing through him. Sleep claimed him again, deep and earned.